What is going on, everybody? My name is Tyler Munstock. I'm the producer for Gilded Fletching, and with me today is our game designer, Alex Ola.
Yeah, that's me. I'm the game designer, Alex Ola, and here's a quick look at our team right here. You'll see more work from them pretty soon. Moving into what is Gilded Fletching? Well, Gilded Fletching here at the Fletchers Guild, we aspire to create deep and engaging puzzle experiences for all of our players. And a quick game summary is Gilded Fletching is a first-person puzzle platformer that tasks the player with exploring a long-lost temple in the deep woods. As you explore, you'll find many secrets within and unlock powerful artifacts that will aid you on your exploration. Be mindful as the dangers within are not for the faint of heart. Moving forward, you can see our burn down.
Our wonderful burn down chart. Yeah, so this semester, the Fletchers Guild here, we had a fantastic semester. We were able to assign 505 total points, which is incredible. We were able to move 502 both to verify and complete. We only have 3 points still sitting in our backlog that were assigned but not ever moved, which is incredible. Out of 549 total points, we completed 505, which is roughly right about 97%, or I'm sorry, 93% of the total points and tasks that we had originally assigned. So just looking at all this, I'm personally blown away at the all the work our team was able to complete. So let's get into what we did wrong or where we could have done better here. For me personally, I could have checked in with the team a bit more. I at some points noticed that certain team members were taking a bit longer than I expected to complete certain tasks, and I had just failed to communicate with them and check in. One other thing I did wrong was I didn't take enough time to prioritize early on in production of this game, which did end up leading to certain features that did get cut. I was also a little too lenient among team members in their tasks. It took me a while to kind of learn to like put my foot down and everything, and that's definitely something I can work on and do better. And finally, I didn't really encourage communication amongst team members as early as I wanted to. Probably took until around the end of sprint 2 or beginning of sprint 3, where I was like, all right, guys, like, let's chit chat, like, let's talk with each other. And I wish I had just done that earlier on.
Yeah, to build off of that communication thing, I think it kind of hurt us early on because we didn't really have like a sense of like a community almost as a team. We knew of each other, but we always stayed in kind of our own voice channels, and we didn't interact very much outside of just in the individual times when we had to. So towards the end of the sprint 2, we started to build up more of that, and everyone started to talk a lot more, and a lot more stuff got done. For me personally, I definitely did not give enough reference at the beginning of tasks. So when we would give tasks to our awesome 2D artist Haley, or even our level designers, 3D artists as well, like we just didn't have enough reference for them. So they took a little bit longer because they were trying to figure out what's going on in my head, which it's a weird place. I definitely gave too much freedom to the team as well, which builds off that previous thing. Is if I was a lot more structured on the exact thing I wanted every single time, we could have gotten things done faster, and things would in the game would be a lot more consistent. As well as sometimes I would check cards, and I was trying to get through like 10 or 15 of them because our team would be turning in a bunch at once. So I would quickly go through it, but I wouldn't take the time necessary to really dig deep into that, and it could cause some issues that persisted throughout the project. Now, to some of the things we did right.
Yes, going into the things that we did right. There's a lot of them. We tried to focus on the main ones. We tried to keep a really good focus on certain features. For example, if a certain member was working on a certain feature of programming or a certain level design was working on a certain level, they were the only ones that touched that feature just to ensure that there was no confusion with crossing design between team members. Another thing I believe I did correctly was I kept personal burn down documents of each team members. Keeping these was incredibly important when we had our sprint kickoffs. Just for the fact that I knew exactly how much work each team member can handle in a given 2 weeks, and I was never able to overbear someone or give someone too little work where they would accomplish all the work and then have nothing left to do. And then I also believe that I kept the team motivated and feeling positive about their work. If a team member was ever feeling not as confident with their work, I would always reassure them that their work is amazing, their work is great, and they just got to keep it up.
Yeah, for some of the things that I think I did right as well is when we were working through certain aspects of the game, we kept a very consistent pipeline. So if it would always go a certain way through the team so that every single person that did have to touch it would touch it at that time they needed to. It's it made so there wasn't random assets that just got thrown into the wind. Everything that needed to be there was there when they needed it. We definitely also challenged team members a lot in their own fields, which made them grow much more as a person within their respective talent. So, such as asking a programmer to do something they were completely uncomfortable with, or like, I have no idea how to do this. But we really were like, we know you can do it, and we know the time. It's like part of your card will be learning how to do this, and overall, challenging them made it so the work that they produced was always better than what we could have expected, as well as in the project itself, I made sure to always keep iterations of work to fall back on in case things got broken, corrupted. It's a fully online environment, we're passing files completely through the internet. So it can have some issues where sometimes you're passing on a file and one little thing gets corrupted in that file. So making sure we always had work to fall back on was a really, really essential thing. And then me and Tyler both thought one thing we did really, really well is we did not crunch once this entire project because we were able to prioritize tasks.
Yeah, so that which is absolutely outstanding. So getting into what we would do differently, things I would do differently is I would organize and prioritize from the absolute get go, just to ensure that there doesn't have to be any unnecessary cuts and features throughout the development process. And something I would also do differently is not to be the nice guy all the time, and just to be like learn to be a little bit more stern and lenient, know when to put my foot down, and just say like, no, this is how it's going to go because this is how it needs to go. As well as to preemptively act on any minor problems before they grew. There were a couple times that we saw problems that could have potentially arose and didn't preemptively act on it to avoid that problem from ever occurring. And in the end, that problem did occur. So that's definitely something that I would do differently next time.
Yeah, for me, I definitely would be working much more hands-on with the level designers, as was a puzzle first-person game. It definitely needed a lot of heavy-handedness in that level design department, and I feel like I definitely gave them a little too much freedom and a little too much lenience on what the features within the game would be. So if I was to redo this project from the beginning with the knowledge I have now, I'd be much more focused on that specific department. I also would be very I would stay way more consistent with the art style because there would be times where I'm like, "Oh, I want this and I don't want it to be super low poly, but everything else is low poly," which it caused some issues just with the general workflow of our 3D modelers where they were at times like, "Oh, low poly, this is super easy, super quick." And other times I'm like, "But I don't want that to be low poly specifically." And we would pick one art style and go with it because jumping between the multiple within the same project can cause a lot of really weird issues. And then I would definitely be finding the full amount of references the second we make the cards instead of assigning them and grabbing the references while they're working on it because then if they do have progress they got to jump back because it's something that differently and it causes a lot of issues, so make sure there's reference for the artists when they start to work on it.
So getting into some things we would do again, I personally would continue to keep personal burn down charts of every member on the team, just because of how much it helps in sprint kickoffs. I'd also continue to help keep the team motivated and feeling positive about their work. I always want to keep everyone feeling great about what they're doing, feeling confident. It just helps produce more effective and efficient work in the end. And I would also just continue to provide quick and constructive feedback on everyone's work. I feel like if you can give someone quicker and quick constructive feedback, then we can get quicker iterations and we can get better work out in the end.
Yeah, I would definitely as well do challenge the team again. I would definitely always challenge your team in a like a learning perspective, not like fight your team, but make sure that you're always allowing them to grow as a individual. Always make sure that when you're doing certain things with your team that it's something even if they're not comfortable with, you know that they can do it. You just got to give them the time to do that. As well as I would definitely keep iterations backups again. To everyone out there that is working on projects that is listening to this, do this please. It trust me, if you don't think you need it, you are wrong. And then I definitely would make sure to keep people focused on their own features. So say someone's working on a specific arrow type within our game, I wouldn't want a bunch of people kind of putting their hands into it because then it can muddle it up and cause it to work slower. Making sure everyone stays in line with what they're doing is a really effective way to keep people on task and working more efficiently and faster.
Now, what did we learn? So I learned that there's got to be a balance between being extremely positive and motivating all the time, as well as being in charge, knowing when to put your foot down. And this semester, I learned that you can't just be the nice guy all the time. You gotta know when to put your foot down and be in charge. I also learned that organization, communication, teamwork is key. If you don't know where any of your work is, how can you work on it? As well as if you're having a problem whatsoever with anything and you don't know how to communicate that in a way where someone can help you, your work isn't going to be done as efficiently. And lastly, I learned that everyone's motivated differently, and it's how you motivate those people and find the ways that they are motivated to help get them to produce more efficient work for the team.
Yeah, definitely. Some of the things I learned is every team is definitely unique and different in a way that it's every single team dynamic you will work with, especially with these bigger teams. It will be 100% different every time. Even if you get some of the same team members, you're gonna have to interact with them differently because they're gonna interact differently. It's a very complicated web that it's really fun to kind of just go through and work around with. Adaptability when working on an online environment is also essential. It's something that we definitely had a fun time dealing with because with the fully online environment, not everyone has the same sleep schedules as normal. So sometimes people will be working on these things at the middle of the night and early morning, and there's a lot of random times that we'd be getting work turned in that we need to stay kind of almost online 24/7, but like know when your limits are to make sure that you're always keeping that good consistent flow. Like a good example is it kind of felt at times we had teammates overseas because how much difference their sleep schedule was almost. And then the last thing that I learned, and I think Tyler as well, is being a lead in these projects is definitely more than just a title. You need to really grow as a person and learn a lot about yourself before you can sit in front of a full team and tell them, this is my idea, this is what I'm doing, this is how we're going to do it. Like, for example, as a person, do not display emotions very well. I don't really have that much empathy towards people, but as a lead, I really need to have that. I need to be understanding. I need to be able to grow with these individuals that I work with to show that, I understand your struggles and we can work through them together.
Yeah, and that's great. Exactly that. Just to build on that a little more, it's about caring about your team, by caring about their personal health throughout this entire process. We never wanted to overbear anyone, especially to the point where it started affecting like their mental health. Yeah, we just really want to care about everyone and make sure everyone's doing great as a lead. So we just wanted to take a quick, brief moment to show off the best work of each team member, or the best work that each team member has completed throughout this design process. So here we have a slide on Christian Mullins, and it's depicting that all of the animations he was able to get in, as well as the awesome airburst arrow he was able to create.
Yeah, I just really wanted to show off the airburst arrow specifically because physics are very fun, and I think what we did with this specific arrow in one of the levels is really interesting, and I would love for you guys to check it out. As well as he did a very smart thing with the animation states, and I think you guys will, when you play the game, kind of realize it.
Now, moving down to Miles Gomez, Miles was able to create a lot of the functionality for the actual firing of the arrow, as including like the drop of gravity that it affects the arrow with, and such, as well as he created a lot of the puzzle mechanics, as you can see on the bottom right image, with the awesome pendulum that we have.
Yeah, just again another thing. Classic physics are fun. Another thing that involves physics. But he did a really good job of creating that core character and the actual charge mechanic for the bow that Christian was able to get the animations hooked up to, and overall he was a really solid team member and made a lot of really good stuff.
So moving down to Warren Rose, here we have the amazing effort and work he put into for rebinding the control system in our game. It's absolutely incredible. As well as he was also able to incorporate all the UI and implement all of the buttons and such into all of our menus. And we're so grateful for all that. All that stuff came out looking so amazing.
Yeah, I mean, all I gotta say is you can see just the effort and time that he put into this, just with all the stuff working fantastically, all super tested, super clean. It's just, I'm super happy with our programming team, and this is only a little slice of the things that they were able to do.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So moving on to level design with Jonathan Mills. On the bottom left, we have the awesome warp arrow level he was able to create, and on the top right, we have the airburst arrow tutorial level he was able to create, and those just both came out incredible, incredible.
Yeah, all I gotta say is just get into the game, play through. You once you find these levels, you'll be like, wow, these are fantastic. That's
Moving down to Tyler Huff and some great work he was doing. On the left side, we have the movement tutorial level, the very first level in our game. It looks insane. It looks amazing. I cannot wait for any of you guys that haven't seen it to see it. And on the top right, we have the Bramble tutorial level, which also it just looks incredible. Those pendulums up there, they're insane. They're awesome, and yeah, you guys will love them if you play it.
yeah, it's another thing. It's just you can tell just the time and effort that was put into a lot of these levels just by looking around the environment and seeing all the little things that they did. So, I please go play it out, play it and check it out. It's really really fantastic.
So getting into some 3D art with Angel, he was able to model two of our arrows. He made the airburst and the bramble arrow. They are both on the right side, and they just look incredible. He was also able to model some vines and some floors and textures, and just everything he made just came out looking amazing. They're incredible.
Yeah, this is definitely a fraction of what he did for the team. He did a lot of models, but these are some of our favorites with those arrows looking really, really good. And then the texture itself, we had a very, very long back and forth about that thing, and I had to show it off because the amount of effort that was put into it.
Yeah, moving down now to Falcon. She was also able to create the other two arrows, the standard and the warp arrow, which they just look absolutely fantastic. As well as the two braziers we have, which are a key component in a few levels of our game.
Yeah, again, it's all the work that these people have done. You can't see it directly here. Just play through the game, and you'll definitely see just the little touches that they put into these models and everything else. And it's just it's a lot of the little things that I was really looking for, and they really delivered.
Yeah, they definitely delivered 110%. Going down to 2D art with Haley, we have here the background for our credit screen as well as our key art poster. These are only a fraction of the amazing art that she was able to come up with, and these are awesome. These are incredible.
Yeah, I if I started talking here, I would talk for 5 days. So I'm just gonna leave it there. Just the art speaks for itself. It's fantastic.
Yeah, exactly that. Getting down to 2D art with Daniel Marshall, he was able to animate everything we had in our game, from the player bow to the hands to the enemy. And just looking at these animations here, he did a fantastic job with everything.
Yeah, he was able to animate it in a way that was made it super easy to implement within Unity, which was awesome. He understood kind of the flow of how game animation worked and was able to implement that correctly.
And a big special thanks, of course, to Eder for rigging everything up for us. Everything he did was rigged absolutely perfectly. We never really found any issues whatsoever once we got work from him. So it's just the biggest thanks to him.
Yeah, you'll be seeing this guy's name a lot more probably. He's awesome. Like, and all the stuff he made was really really good.
And then just to end things off, we just want to say a big thank you to everyone on the team, everyone who play tested our game, gave us feedback. Without you guys, we could not have made this game as great as it is. And I just could not be happier with the work we were able to make. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, seriously, thank you to everyone on the team and everyone in 495. We all did a fantastic job, and I cannot wait to see what everyone else has in store for us. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Team Gilded Fletching. Coming up next is going to be Shapeshift Dungeon. Hang on just 1 second. We'll switch out presenters, and we'll be right back.
Hello there, everyone.
Hello.
Team Shapeshift Dungeon here. I am Sky, the game designer.
Yep, and I'm Arjun, the producer. And with us is our team, our awesome team, featuring Joe, Justin, and Alex as our programmers, Mark and Brandon as our level designers, Devin, Jose, and Chance as our 3D modelers, and then Tanya, Alexis, and Armando as 2D art and animation, and Eder for rigging. Sky, do you want to tell us a little bit about our game?
Yeah, so Shapeshift Dungeon is a one-room roguelike where the player fights monsters in a dungeon layout and then goes to the center, and it shifts into a new dungeon layout where they fight more monsters and they collect items along the way. And the game is randomized to some extent so that every run is a little bit different.
All right, so getting into the sprint, we had a huge 200-point sprint for our final sprint 7, which was a lot more than our average. I personally really like the 110 to 111 range that we hung out for about 3 sprints, but I think once the game started coming together, a lot of people on our team just started getting really motivated, and it was a lot easier to become passionate about our game, and it showed in their work. So while our average is 127 points, this is skewed by our sprint 7. I think our real average is closer to 115 points.
Absolutely agree about the motivation. Just seeing how cool the game was already got people wanting to make more.
Yeah. So we were pretty fortunate that we finished our minimum viable product quite early. This was thanks to a lot of really basic prototyping, but it took until sprint 5 to reach a build where we're really satisfied. And at every point of work since then has been focusing on polish, making adjustments, or adding content and not necessarily new features. I think that's really important because it's those last moments of polish and additional content that really allow the team to showcase their creativity, and you can see their passion in everything that they've made. So, in total, we did cut 315 points from our plan, but I'm really happy with the 893 that we ended up with. I think our team absolutely blew it out of the water, and
100%, yeah.
see how awesome they are. So,
1,000%.
yeah.
Absolutely killed it.
So before we get to our postmortem, we're just going to showcase what the end of the semester looks like for our team and what polished stages look like for all of our team members. Sky?
Yeah, so starting out with level design, we can see the VFX from Mark at the top. On the left-hand side, we have the charge attack when the player charges up their sword and thrusts it forward. Got particles shooting in the opposite direction to show the energy of the sword moving through the air. And then on the right side, we have the radius of damage. So you attack 3 times, the sword slams into the ground gets a crack in it, and there's an expanding radius of visible damage area that you can see when that attack happens, and you can see the monsters that get hit by it, which is really cool. And he also added a little dust cloud, which sells the impact. So I think he did an awesome job with both of these. And then on the bottom, we have our furnished maps from the final sprint. We've got all of our props in the game, and we made not only just improvements to the maps themselves to make them easier to navigate, but Mark and Brandon both added in all of the props from the rest of the end sprint stuff. Pots and crystals, stuff that weren't in previously, all got in right at the end, and we're super, super happy that they put in as much time as they did to get these maps looking. It's so good. The one on the right is a boss map that got added in the last sprint. Mark went in and added a bunch of crystals that Devin made, and we'll take a look at those in a minute. It just looks phenomenal. Excellent work, you guys.
All right. What did our programmers do this time?
Yeah, so for programming, we got Joe did our skeletons, and I worked on the slimes and the worms. The skeletons have a really complex block feature where they hold a shield, and you need to be able to get them to attack you, and they're not blocking permanently, and that took some tweaking to get right, and I think Joe nailed it. Did a really good job getting the skeletons to feel appropriately different from other enemies in the game, and not too hard, not too easy. Alex adjusted our item systems and got everything working even better than it already was. You can see on the top right, we have the laser wand has a little effect on it when it's fully charged to better indicate that, in addition to sound effects, which Justin implemented. So we got a sound library. Shout out to Warren for helping us get a sound library, which we could pull assets from. And then Justin went and did some pitch shifts and volume shifting and added them all into mixers and basically set up all the audio in the game. So really, really awesome, everyone on the team. This is just a sliver of all of the programming work that they've done throughout the semester.
Yep. And here's what our 3D artist did. Sky, why don't you tell us a little bit about the final models?
Oh yeah, so we've got more. We wanted the end of the game to feel a little bit more unique. Like, yeah, we go from grass to lava, cool. But what about props in the level? Should the props change over time? Absolutely. We've got these lava crystals that Devin made, which is amazing looking. And they've got point lights in the game to make them look even better. And then we've got columns and broken columns. Sorry, we're not showcasing the columns, but they're there. And those look really, really good as well from Jose. So awesome job, both of you. And then Chance did our breakable pots. So this isn't just a pot that you're looking at. This actually is like 50 different pieces that can fall apart and shatter when you hit it. And it's got a version of the texture with purple on it so that it has emissiveness to show that it contains a gem when you break it. And that was really, really important for us in the design to show the pots that have gems so that you're not just breaking every single one in the game to try and find them. And he made it white so that we could alter the texture in the game, and that's why it looks brown in the top picture, which phenomenal. Really, really good work, all of you. And for 2D art, we have... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we have our key art from Tanya and Alexis, who finished the very last of our items. And Sky, why don't you tell us a little bit more about why we chose these images as our key art?
Absolutely. So the player's sword has kind of become an icon for the game. It really is a unique and awesome looking sword. It is what you're seeing the whole time you're playing the game. It's incorporated into the health bar, and we also wanted to incorporate it in both our cover art, and you can see there's a mouse pointer as the player's sword as well. So it just looks really, really cool, and we wanted to incorporate it as much as possible to fit all the theme of the game together. And then we have Alexis's final pieces of art for our items, the gem bag and the spiked boots, which were originally just steel toe boots, but she added the spikes to them, and they look so much better for it. It better sells the fact that when you dash into an enemy, it's supposed to hurt them, and I really, really like that. So awesome job, both of you, with all of these art pieces. And on the right, we have our poster for the game, too. So if we ever make posters, we've got art for it.
Okay, and lastly, animation.
So on our animation side, we've tried to get as much done before the last sprint as possible, but of course, there is more work to be done. And we had everyone kind of come together, even people who weren't originally set up for animation. Chance, who had worked on the worm model, really wanted to see it get animated into the game, so he said, I'll do it myself. So Eder went and rigged it. Chance animated it, and so now we have worm animations in the game, and I was able to code those in, and they look super, super threatening and cool. The skeletons were animated by Armando, and he was going to use the player animations since they shared a similar structure and just copy the rig over. But because of the shield, it made the rig just a little bit different, and the animations didn't port over. And instead of giving up and excluding the skeleton from the game, Armando said, I'm going to do custom new animations with this new skeleton rig. And he did. I'm just completely blown away. I thought they would be cut for sure if they weren't sharing the same rig. And finally, we have the mage boss, which was, again, rigged by Eder and animated by Alexis. And I know we had technical issues right at the end, which were threatening to cut it from the game as well, but miraculously we got those figured out. Alexis did an awesome job getting the different animations, and I couldn't be more proud of everyone.
So that's what our end of semester sprint looks like. I just want to thank everybody one more time because their work and every piece of their work really matters and really makes a difference into why this game worked out so well. But to help break that down a little bit more, let's get into our post-mortem. Let's start with what went wrong. So I think first for both of us is that neither of us have an art background. So when our artists asked us what we wanted for some of our assets, we didn't have answers for them right away. We didn't know what we wanted when they. So when they gave us concepts, our response was, "Oh, all of these look great. Any one of these could be perfect for our game." So you can see in the examples, Sky, which one did we end up going with?
So of the meters on the top left here, we have none of those are the final version. Not a single one. We just we tried a couple different things, and I said, "Can we try something else?" And we ended up with a full radius around the edge that fills up over time, and that was the final version. If I had a better idea of good design, good UX, good, what is going to be the best for this particular piece of the game, we wouldn't have had to go back and forth and do so many different iterations. But I'm glad that we did end up on a final piece that looks as good as it does. We had the same problem at the bottom right on the dummy, where I didn't like the way it looked, just two legs and no post. It looked like you hit the dummy once and it should fall over and just stay on the ground. But that's not how dummies work. You're supposed to be able to wail on them all day and they stay upright and let you hit them. So we added a base to the bottom. We tried switching out two legs to one leg. And eventually we ended up with the one on the very, very right there with the post and the two legs. It didn't end up making it into the game, unfortunately, just due to time constraints and cuts. But it's a very good example of where having a better art background, having a better idea of what looks good would have helped our team get things in quicker and easier. And that's something I'm working on constantly. So.
Something for both of us. Speaking of things that made it into the game, we also had way too many enemies. So we were aiming for like a monster of the week pattern. So we got 7 enemies in 7 sprints. However, ultimately, most of these ended up getting added at the very end. And so, how did that affect our playtesting, Sky?
Yeah, so I initially designed for like 10 enemies, and I knew that was too many, and then we cut 2 of them, and then we cut another one, and then we cut another one, and then the modelers really wanted it, and I really wanted it, so we brought it back, and we only had a couple things programmed, like the skull and the crystal were pretty much it for like 5 sprints, and then we got the goblins on sprint 6, and then we had sprint 7. We just got in all the rest of the stuff. Like we just worked really hard. That's where some of that 200 points came from, is getting the skeleton, the worm, the slime, and the mage all in at the end. And that means we didn't get to test them. We tested them internally with the team, but we didn't get to send those models out and have everyone else get to see them and test them. And I know that there were a couple of issues, and we tried to iron those out as best we could, but it could be better if we had more time to test, and if we had planned out our time and made sure that we got that one enemy per week that we were aiming for. That would have been a lot better.
Yeah, so here's for us a lesson that just because we can make these enemies doesn't necessarily mean that we should, even though they all work uniquely and they all add something to the game. I think having a fewer, better, refined enemies would have worked out well for us as well.
Yep.
All right, and then lastly, for what went wrong, is our initial principle of no crunch. And you might be thinking, like, why is that what went wrong? But for me, as a producer, one of the things that I'm most proud of last semester was creating a 495 project entirely with no crunch. And so when we came into this game, I wanted to continue that legacy. So I came in telling the team exactly how to do things and what to expect. But then I learned that the way that our programmers like to work is through what we're calling programming parties. So you can see this is our repository history. Um, and there's little peaks and valleys. And those peaks are weekend programmer parties that we did basically every 2 weeks and got a lot of work done. And this workflow worked for us. We weren't pressuring anybody into working. It just uh, the ability for everybody to have free time on the weekend and then see each other working and talk to each other while they're working is the best thing that could have happened for our group. And so the lesson for me was that my job wasn't to tell people when to work and when not to work. My job was to enable them to work to the best of their ability, and sometimes that meant being a parent and making sure that they take stretch breaks or that they've eaten something today. But most of the time, that just meant making sure that everything was ready for them and helping them identify issues quickly and just enabling them to the best of my ability. So I think going in with a rigid plan is something that forced me to restructure my whole semester's plan because it just didn't work at the beginning. And then moving on to what went right, kind of the opposite was that what went right for us was that we had no mandatory crunch. We never asked anybody to come stay up tonight to get work done. Fortunately, just our numbers were high enough. People were working really well enough that we finished most of our goals earlier into the sprint. So when we had our parties and we did our work, it was because people wanted to do that work. And I think that passion is key to any team. You need to find passionate people and then enable them to sustain their passion. And so I know for me, I relied heavily on being very honest with the team about the goals and expectations that we had, and I relied on them to be honest with me about what they can accomplish and what they cannot. More often,
I absolutely agree. I am partially to blame for crunch, 110%. And I think, yeah, I agree that it's both something that went right and something that went wrong. It is, you know, ideally you would not have crunch. You don't want to provide crunch culture. You don't want to expect people to crunch. And by crunching, you're kind of expecting it out of other people. And if I encouraged any team members to crunch harder than they would have otherwise, I do apologize. But it was also a huge success in that every time we did bucker down and get a bunch of work done, the game just was accelerated beyond its limits. So each and every time.
and so one of the reasons why this is uh, a example of what went right is because seeing the extra work that people put into it, I think that really motivated a lot of other people. And you can see some acceleration, especially in sprints 5, 6, and 7, where we went from our steady go of 110 to 111 all the way up to 149, 132, and 200. That was pure passion and nothing else. People felt secure in their grades already. It was just they wanted to make a cool game, and they did it. So I'm really proud of them for achieving that. Up next for what went right was our documentation.
Oh yeah. So with the GED, I I'll boast a little bit. I'll be proud. I spent the weekend before, as soon as I knew that I was going to be the game designer on Shapeshift Dungeon, and a whole team was going to be relying on me to have the answers. Uh, I started working on a 30-page game design document, just a comprehensive breakdown, table of contents, and everything. You're working on enemies, you want to know what this enemy does, go to that section of the game design doc, look at what that enemy does. You're a modeler, you want to know its scale. I didn't have that initially. We talked about it, and now all the scaling of all the enemies is listed in there as well. You're working on environment art. We've got a list of all the different potential props that could be in the game and what they might do, how they look, art references for a lot of different things. There could be more art references, but just the amount of content in the game design doc was both excessive and necessary. I got feedback from my team multiple times that where I thought that I had put all this time in, and they weren't even going to look at the design doc very much. It actually got referenced quite a lot throughout production, and I'm extraordinarily happy that not only was the time, justified, but it paid off like more than the work that I put into it, I think. I didn't have to go in and answer individual questions or have questions go unanswered throughout production. It was just always available to people when they needed answers.
Yep, and I think one of the keys here is that we updated this document. So it was a living document with the changes that we'd made in design and the feedback that we'd gotten from players. A lot of that information was documented and available for our team right away. And that was, in addition to the initial work, the keys to successful documentation. All right. And then lastly, what went right for us was our team. Something that's really special about 495 that isn't quite the case for a lot of the other classes is that everyone here is proving that they're ready to do this job in the industry, and it really shows. Something that I forget often is that I was working with. Sometimes I often forgot that I was working with other students and just came to rely on these people as experts in their own field. We weren't necessarily just like learning new tools. I was dealing with people who already knew and had experience. And our team is incredibly talented, very eager to learn new things, and every one of them just has this immense passion for making games, and it absolutely shows in their work. It's been incredible and an absolute privilege to have been able to work with them this semester. And to everyone listening, the best thing that you could do for your career is reach out to these team members and network with them because they are phenomenal. And it's been such a
Absolutely.
pleasure to work with every member of this team. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and even when they didn't have the answers, I know Joe and Alex specifically were working on systems that they had never done before, where equipping items and unequipping items and stat modification, and then enemy AI and navigation and complex behaviors. These aren't things that they knew how to do at the start of the semester, and they just they tackled it, they did their best, and they nailed it. I don't have anything else to say other than every team member, I think, did something that was a little out of their comfort zone and did well. They approached the challenge with an open mind. That's what we like to see.
All right, and then moving to the end, what would we do differently? Sky?
Yeah, so the number one failing that we mentioned is that we don't have an art background, and we just struggle with providing good references and setting expectations properly of what we want out of a model or 2D art or whatever it might be. So there were a couple of times, either early in production or even late into production, that we just didn't set an expectation, and so we got back too many revisions and stuff for any individual piece. You can see examples of like just the original spikes. Should they be red and shiny? Should they be dark and gloomy? I didn't tell my 3D model. I didn't tell the person working on that what I expected out of them. I just said make some spikes and thought it would be good enough. But that's a failing on my part, not theirs. I needed to be setting the expectations of what I want out of things. And so if I were to do it again, I would make sure to set better expectations for everything. The icon art for the desktop icons, Tanya did an excellent job with all of them, and none of them made it into the game. The icon we ended up using was a essentially top-down screenshot of our center tile, and then put the text for Shapeshift Dungeon, the SD, on it, and that was it. We had been actually using close to that icon for a while, and rather than just saying, we're going to keep using that, we asked Tanya to do a bunch of stuff without really having an idea of where it was going to go and what was going to be the result of it. So Apologies to everyone on the team who had to do tons of revisions because we don't know art. If we had an art director, that would have been insanely helpful. So we'll definitely try to improve on that.
And that's something that we both definitely can improve on. But what would we do again? This one's my favorite.
Yeah, so player feedback was a huge factor in like improving the game. We had not one, not two, but like 3 different sources of getting player feedback. So we had, of course, our Google feedback form, which every team had. We also had a level feedback form. So at the end of every level, you could fill in a review and submit a rating, which actually was emailed to a private email for the game. And then our level designers could look at those emails and say, okay, what is wrong with this level? How can we improve it? And that's shown in the quality of the levels at the end. They're all really spectacular because they got all the feedback they needed to improve those. There's a separate player feedback form in Excel that I set up to record every bit of player feedback I got, both from level feedback and the Google form, where I just listed, okay, what was the thing that they said, how high priority is it to implement this, and if it was complete, if we did do it, then I would mark it as complete. And every time I was like, okay, what other things can we do to improve the game, I would always reference the player feedback list. Finally, the third thing was Unity Analytics. I decided to try out Unity Analytics, and we didn't get a ton of use out of it, but it was helpful nonetheless. As a good example of why Unity Analytics isn't the perfect tool, you can see in the chart at the bottom, they recorded the active play time in 5.73 thousand seconds as the total play time of the day. You have to convert that yourself into hours. Why they record it in thousands of seconds, I don't know. That's Unity Analytics. But if you know the questions you want to get answered, you can actually get some valuable feedback out of it. So the best example of that is our stat potions, where you can either upgrade your attack, your speed, or your health. We were able to get very clear feedback where players might say they liked health, but they didn't actually take it that often. The analytics told us exactly what players were taking in the game and at what rates, and so we were able to adjust the stat potions from there.
Yep. And then there's one more form of feedback that we got, which is watching players actually play our game, and I think that ended up being,
of course,
our best form of feedback, although it was the rarest. Seeing people's reactions in real time and seeing what they're struggling with, what they're enjoying, that by far transcended all this other feedback. But all of it ended up being useful. So everything's absolutely crucial to the final product, and we tried to use feedback as much as we can to guide our decision making. And I think that was probably the best decision that we made throughout the semester.
100%. Yep.
All right, and then lastly, what did we learn?
So for me, I already knew the importance of some of these things, but I was more reinforced and further nailed down the importance of pre-production, communication, constant building and testing, and player feedback. Those are pillars of not just good production, but like having a happy team and making sure that everything is going smoothly. So the good pre-production means that you're not, struggling and changing ideas and cutting and adding throughout the process. You have a plan. You go in and people know that you are confident in what you're doing. And communication, making sure that you and everyone else on the team is all on the same page, is so key to just everything. Without good communication, nothing is going to get done the way the designer intends. Nothing's going to be consistent throughout the game, and people are just not gonna be happy with the results. Communication is everything. The constant builds and testing allow us to make changes based on player feedback and make the game fun and iron out any frustrations that people have. And of course, the player feedback goes hand in hand with that. The Another really important thing that I learned was just when and how to say no to anything that got moved to verify. So if somebody took an asset and they said, I'm done, I could just approve that and be done with it. Or I could say, that's not production quality and it needs to go back and it needs these specific changes. And learning how to do that properly and make sure that the team is understanding why I'm telling them no is incredibly, incredibly important. If I said yes to every asset, I guarantee the game would be lower quality. If I said no to every asset, we would have nothing. So learning when and how is super, super important. And of course, just we learned that we can do it. The game is great, and did an awesome job.
All right, and then as for myself, I think the most important lesson that I had, because this was my first time producing, is that people make games. They're not assets, they're not resources, they're people. And the way to manage them is not just a numbers calculation, it's assessing their needs, talking to them, being honest with them, and really understanding their perspective of what they can do and what they cannot do, and then enabling them to do better with every iteration, every task that they do. So I think that by far was the most important thing. Besides that, I also learned that meetings are for gathering consensus, not for making decisions. If you have a meeting to make decisions, it's going to be there for hours because people, you should rely on key decision makers and trust them to do their job. That's why we have so much experience is to help us guide our decisions, and we can do things like tests and stuff to help identify which decisions were correct. But in order to run your meetings effectively, the important thing is that everybody is on the same page and everybody understands which decisions were made. And then also, really important, is that every point of work is a story. It's really easy, especially as we had 200 points in a sprint and almost 900 points in total, to say that, oh, those are just individual points. He did that and she did that super fast, no big deal. That's not the case. Every single one of those is a challenge, an obstacle overcome, something that somebody did that genuinely deserves the same amount of credit. It's a task that you needed to get done, and someone went out of their way to get it done. And we need to appreciate that and recognize it for all the steps that it took to get there. Um, and just kind of following that, producing is about enabling your team. It's not about telling people how to do things or why to do things and in what order to do them. It's about making sure that they can do them. You're the grease to their cogs to enable them to do their job the best that they can do it. And the way that I found was easiest to do that was to reinvest in them, to always be providing resources and to enable them to be better every single week, to get them to think about their portfolios, to get them to think about different avenues in their own specialization, and to really just share more and more resources with them. Because I know that the better that they become, the better our game will be. And then obviously, lastly, we can do this. I think we're just really proud of how the team finished strong, and I think every single one of these people has the ability to do this at the highest level, and will be an excellent industry leader one day. So thank you, team.
Thank you.
And as a final note, we have our dungeon cleared screen. We're currently having a competition to see who can beat our game fastest on hardcore mode. Our current fastest speed record, actually, it's updated recently, is 18 minutes and 48 seconds by chance, which I believe is a minute or two faster than the next fastest. So, amazing
Yeah,
job, Chance.
I can't even get sub 21. This is an insane time. You guys should try it.
I highly
See how hard it
recommend
is.
all of you to try to beat it because uh, we're getting close, but not quite there. And the game is honestly just so much fun. Thank you once again, everyone, for a fantastic semester. We're really proud of Shapeshift Dungeon and our wonderful team and everything that they've accomplished this semester. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right. Thank you very much, Shapeshift Dungeon. Everybody stick around. Coming up next will be Team Trapped. We'll be right back.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dylan Levy-Gantz. I am the producer for Trapped.
And hello, my name is Zachary Neusdorfer. I am the game designer for Trapped.
And welcome to our final sprint review post-mortem, where we're going to review a bunch of stuff from the semester and show off what we got done this last sprint as well. So, here you guys go. The amazing team for Team Trapped Studios. I love you guys. You guys know about the game as well, so let's just jump right into the burn down for the whole semester. So this was obviously our hardest hitting sprint with 173 points because we were able to confirm a lot of the epics, if not all of them. I think we did confirm all of them for the game. So overall, the whole game was a 606 point game. Of those, 456 points were moved throughout all of the sprints, and we were left with nothing in verify. So we were left over with 150 points in the backlogs. Couldn't get around to it. A little bit of polish, but overall, we made an awesome, fully packaged game, and it's it's up on the store right now, and can't wait to get until more people play it. But yeah, here we go. This is the whole sprint point value of the entire semester. So there you go. Okay, so how we're going to do this is we're going to do post-mortem stuff first, and then we're going to go on to the rest of the team. We're just going to list off the 1 to 3 things that we have for each category, and we're going to give like a quick description about what each of those means. So what went wrong with production? On the production side, so my side, communication, misplanning which features come first before others, and cards getting verified without testing in the game. So the first one is communication. A lot of the time on some cards, there was kind of weird wording after the fact, which means the card was written, it was sent out, it was agreed upon, and then there was work getting done on the card where we revisited it and then said, oh, that's not exactly what the direction we wanted to go. We wanted to go. So we actually met up a couple more times and changed the wording around with obviously the consent of the people on the cards, and just to make sure that there was a better direction going forward. For the second one, for misplanning which features come first, I think Sprint 1 for us was a little bit rough because there was stuff being planned and produced and created even though other game systems or stuff that relies on it weren't being made yet. So it's one step at a time with game design. You really have to design from the ground up, and you can't really assume the stuff that you will design from the ground up will work. So you have to get the core out first. Like I think we were doing hazards first, even though we didn't have like any levels or any way we knew the hazards were going to go in the levels first. So completely on me. Different planning strategy moving forward. And the last one is cards getting verified without testing in the game fully. So cards were kind of getting sent into verify and then sent into complete without it going into the project, which that was like a sprint one and done kind of thing. We never did that again. But that was definitely one of the things that we had to attack quicker. So we have to, in the future, you just have to get everything from verify. Once you send it into complete, it has to be in the game. If not in the game, you have to bring it into your own project to see if it works on your side, and then you can have confidence sending it into the game. But yeah, communication, misplanning features, and cards getting sent in without being tested.
All right, I'm going to talk about some of the design things from my end that I feel like I could have done much better. Some things that went wrong. For the first one, the feature reworks were not planned out enough. So a lot of you guys know before, Trapped was a very different game from before then, and I had plans to kind of like continue on that route. But as I kept getting closer and closer to the beginning of the semester, I kept kind of like doubting myself about it. And after having a conversation with a few people, I decided to completely flip the switch on it. And I completely started rewriting everything and reworking everything. And this kind of also, I think, ties into Dylan's second point, with the misplanning of the features, because some of the features weren't even completely designed yet. It took me like the first 3 weeks to like completely get it. Like as soon as we started the semester, I started rewriting a design document for the whole thing. And honestly, if I was to go back and work on the design document again, I would switch around how I worked on it and worked on some of the more core features first. But I think overall ended up working out, but it definitely kind of ties into that as well. I have a huge problem with putting my little grubby hands in everything, and I definitely spend way too much this time like working on the game myself. I did a lot of programming. I did some modeling. I really wanted to do some like rigging, but I stepped back on that one. But I think overall, like I could have spent much more time designing the game, and both those things together definitely put me in a situation where I was pretty like getting close to burning out towards the end of the semester. I was getting really like tired of working on all these different things and whatnot, and especially like a lot of the times, like I would just go in and start working on stuff instead of like making a card for it or whatnot, and it would just be like a complete disaster later. I feel like the vision got confused at time, and this is I think a lot of the designers, as I've heard before, as you've heard before me, have had trouble getting a lot of references for certain things. I definitely feel like that ties into a lot of this. I feel like there's some people that I was able to just like say something and they would totally understand it, and some people who didn't quite understand it. And it's happens because people understand things in different ways, and it's very important to be able to cater to all those different ways that people understand things. And I don't think I did that very well.
All right, so we can move on to what actually went right with the production cycle. For the producer side, for me, weekend build days was awesome, staying on top of development and coordinating between disciplines. So weekend build days, we actually had a little towards the middle of the semester, just a meetup day where people could just meet up in the Discord. We'd get a lot of work done on the game itself, and people can just drop in and ask questions, clarifying stuff. It wasn't like it was super casual, like come in, work on the game, get some questions in, and just hang out. So that those types of like team bonding situations and just days where you just have dedicated work days to work on the game, it just does so much for development. And what you can see later is we really didn't have that much crunch. We essentially used Sprint 7 as a way of every time a new thing came in, we would immediately be on top of it, as my second point states, staying on top of development. So towards the end, Sprint 6, we were actually getting pretty worried we weren't going to get a lot of the stuff in, and then Sprint 6 ended and Sprint 7 started, and the people were just hammering out their cards. Like they were getting everything in, and we were ready for that. So we had, like you're going to see later, Tristan is completely on top of development with us. He was getting in, and I mean all of our programmers really, but Tristan especially stood out, and he was always like, how can I be of help? And every time we have something come in, immediately went into the game, got tested, and then coordinating between disciplines. I've learned this kind of since this is my second time, third time actually doing 495. I kind of have the knowledge of how to speak, the 4K maps for modeling or the rigging and how to do certain things in animating and be coordinating between each discipline, like programming, modeling, and all of them. I'm able to speak in many tongues and treat people with the respect as they have with their discipline, and I think that went really well this time, because as soon as something gets handed off, I need to be kind of the fish net that like takes it to the right place and filters out all the stuff you really don't need to care about. So we get the model, perfect, let's get into the game, attach the textures in Unity from a programming side, and let's make a new prefab. Like that stuff was happening instantly, so that really resulted in a smooth production.
Yeah, so I think something that I did completely right was the design document. I think if you looked at my post-mortem from last semester, you would see that I said things I would like to change for next time, and it would probably be the design document, because my design document was terrible last semester. It was awful. And this semester, I really hammered it down. It was like super long. It was very in-depth. It was easy to reference. It was easy to go through and read everything. All the stats for all the characters were in there. It's just easy to point at it and be like, oh, or even if I forgot something. Oh, I forgot how this works. Somebody asked me something. I forgot how this works. Let me just look it up real fast in my design document. Super easy, very helpful. Another thing, too, is I think it was a very strong idea. I tried to go more for like the +1 development system. One of my favorite games of all time is Risk of Rain, and it's a very successful indie game, and it is a very similar style to this. And so I was trying to base my game more around this instead of trying to come up with my own roguelike idea. And I think this really helped develop features fast, and also very strong features. Features complementing each other. I think that also went right. I feel like the skill tree was super awesome. It worked really well with kind of adding that +1 to the Risk of Rain kind of formula, because we had the we had the chess system, so you could pick up loot, you could run through a ton of different worlds, but then having that other extra progression on top of that, I think really added to the idea.
Yeah. So moving on to what we would do differently next time we were given this current situation. I think we got design up first. So Zach, go
Yeah.
ahead.
So once again, I'm revisiting this. Spend less time working on the actual game instead of design decisions. I think this is huge for me because once again, I get very engrossed in things, especially when I'm like working on the actual like game, and I'll just keep working and working and working, and then people ask me questions and I won't have answers for them, and that's not really a good position to be in when you're a designer. You want to have your answer right away. You want to be able just to be like, oh, here's this, yes, like this, yes, like that. You don't want to have to like be like, hang on, let me think about that for a little bit, because that's just really not how you want to be when you're a designer.
Right. And moving into production, more so from a team-based perspective, establish expectations and standards the first sprint instead of having to do it later anyway. I was kind of, sus about the fact that people came into class, they got their cards, and it was all good, and there really wasn't any questions or clarifying things. So I was like, okay. And then people would go into their channels and they would mute, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I'm not sure. I don't know. It just feels like if we could get in sooner, maybe do one-on-ones with people or join in their channels more often than not, just check in with them and establish this is what we're trying to do for the 2 weeks. And I did that during the sprint kickoffs and the sprint stand-ups. Like, this is what we're trying to do for the week, and this is what we're trying to do by the end of the sprint. But I think if I did that a little bit earlier, we would have a easier time, because there were a lot of like very deep design questions going on that were getting passed my way, and I thought we already went over that. So it was like sprint 3, sprint 4, where people were kind of confused about the direction, and I was like, oh, that is like totally something I should have done earlier and just set the expectations and standards where it's like we need to have this out, and if we don't, like, we're going to be off our deadline. Like, we have a plan for the class, so more of that, more of meeting up with people and kind of understanding where they're at and working with them, definitely, instead of just letting them go out, like getting my foot in the door rather than just watching the team develop. I feel like I should not be in front of them so they stop developing, but aid them and ask where they're at, and just let them know that we have deadlines and we need to keep up with those. Yeah, so what would we do again, Zach?
Yeah, so for design, I think taking risks is a huge thing that's very important for me personally. Like, I know, like, switching the whole game, switching like so many features, switching pretty much almost everything in the game, I think actually really benefited the game, and I think was a very, very smart idea. I feel like if I kept going down this path where I felt like a little lost on, I feel like I would have you keep going down this path that's kind of like feels broken, and it just doesn't feel like I couldn't figure out what was the next step for Trapped, essentially. And so I think taking a step back and taking on those risks, even though it was very like stressful for me to do, considering that, it's like everybody already knows what Trapped did look like and what it had looked like, I think it was a smart idea. And I think that's something I have to embrace better in the future as well.
Yeah, so from the production standpoint, what would we do again? This was pretty successful on our end just because of how often I kept up with Zach. I was in his DMs every day harassing him about what the next thing we need to do is, and if things are going right and there's cards in to verify and if we can get those in and stuff. So just stay 1 to 2 weeks ahead of schedule to ensure there aren't any surprises. You're going to have surprises. It's a guarantee. So, like, as long as you can have a structure or an idea and you're one-to-one with the designer and producer, is that like, if that's like one person, they're both sharing a mind, any question that comes up, it will immediately be answered. And every time someone had a question for me about design, I would go, okay, I definitely ask Zach. And if someone asked Zach about the Trello, he would say, go to me. So we had that trust, and it allowed us to stay on top of development. And we would see two weeks down the line if we can actually fit stuff in. And I think around sprint 5, I was like, oh, I don't know if we're all gonna get all this stuff in. But as soon as the assets started coming in, the animations, the models, we were able to play that really thin line between not getting a lot in and getting exactly what we wanted in. So it's always just checking the backlog, making sure you're doing the most prioritized thing. And I mean, that'll totally stick with me the rest of however long I do producing, my entire life, probably. But yeah. Okay, so what did we learn? Production notes first area here. So learned how to balance the deadlines of the project with the personal lives of the team. So I got to know a lot of people on the team, if not everybody, with our build days and our check-ins. Just realizing where people are at, and sometimes deadlines don't really work for everybody. So I need to, we need to meet in the middle. It can't like be one way or the entirely one way or the other. But I really did learn how to aid people. Maybe they don't have as much knowledge about the subject as I thought, so I would definitely give them more resources. I would work with them on deadlines. Anything they had about Trello, it's totally up to me to answer that. And just staying one-on-one with the team. These are real people, and they all have lives, and it's important that you want to play this character because the game needs to ship. So we understand that everyone has their own personal lives and stuff, but I just need to represent the don't forget about this thing kind of guy, and I think I played that pretty well. And yeah, I just really learned that everybody, like, I think everyone, I guess previously who were doing presentations, everyone said this: every team is different. Doesn't matter if you have a majority of the same team, if you have one or two extra people who weren't on the team last time, it's a completely different dynamic. So I'm essentially going to have to learn this every time I'm on a new team. So just learning that everyone's different and working with everyone to ensure the game ships on time is really all I was there for.
Yeah, and for me, I feel like I learned really the importance of this like strong design of mechanics and whatnot in the games, because like I feel like something that's I feel like I've always struggled with before. Essentially, I think even in the first version of Trapped is just like I felt like I was a lot of the times I was just throwing stuff at a wall and seeing if it would stick, and they would just like be like, oh yeah, we could kind of do it this way, kind of do it that way. And I think with the design document, that really helped me kind of like lock these features in together and see how they actually interact with each other. And I think it's very important to think about all those freaking aspects when you're creating your game. Think about how each system is going to interact with each other, how each system is going to work with one another. It's very important to make sure all those things work in cohesion, even if you feel like a system is not really related to a system. Like, for instance, like the skill tree system is totally not related to the chess system, as in like they don't automatically interact, but they do interact in a way because you are upgrading your skill tree and then you're picking up these augments, and how do those interact with the elements in the skill tree? Like, there's so many things you have to think about, and it's very important that you try to cover all your bases. It's impossible, I feel like, to cover them all, but it's very important to try to, at least. But I think I learned a lot about that this semester.
Absolutely. So I think let's head right into what we got into the last sprint. This was we polished it up. We definitely got it up with the text and everything, but Josh Knapp absolutely killing the game this entire development. So Josh was our game systems character programming guy. So every character that you play was programmed by Josh, and the entire crafting system was built by Josh as well. So I cannot thank Josh enough. He has been an absolute killer. And I asked him before this if it was okay to say, but he actually got a job at Oculus during this development, which is insane. So we can't thank him enough. He made time for us, and he was already also doing his own thing. So like, Josh is absolutely crazy. Huge shout out.
Yeah, no, this crafting system came out very well. It was very important, I feel like, to get this in the game. This is probably the feature I would have put first before the hazards, because this feature I feel like was so important. So I'm really happy that we were able to get it in, because it came out really well, and I think it really helps with the gameplay of the whole game overall.
Yes, sir. Here's some more stuff from Josh. We were actually able to get in a splash zone missile for the robot, and the vignette of blood every time you get damaged, which shows the player what's good.
Yeah, I think that was super important to get in. I feel like we definitely did not have enough player feedback for the players, so having this, taking damage thing, along with the sound of getting hit that Tristan put in, I think really helps the player understand what's going on. Actually, a funny thing about the rocket is we did not anticipate, I did not take into effect the direct hit of taking the initial 100% damage from the direct hit and then the 50% damage from the splash damage, but it actually really worked out because this character was way behind on damage anyways, so I think it really worked out for it in the end.
Of course, these are all in the game, completely modeled, completely up-to-date graphics and on all that stuff. And the robot is in and all animated, which you're going to see later. So moving on here, we have Tristan, another awesome programmer. It's been amazing to see Tristan blossom in this class. We started very humble, and then Tristan immediately jumped on this and grabbed the bull by its horns and immediately showed his potential. There was so much that we had extra that we wanted in the game, and Tristan was that person that would just pick it up and do it. So he did all of the enemy mechanics, got in our animations from Alex and Eder and Andrew, and of course the quick fixes. There's a lot of stuff we actually just can't show, or it wasn't important enough to show, but there was a lot of little hot fixes we were able to get in towards the end of development that Tristan was just absolutely on top of the whole time, and I can't thank him enough.
Yeah, Tristan was super awesome to work with. I really appreciate everything he's done. He was super easy to work with too. He never complained about anything. He was always like, "Oh yeah, I can do that real fast, like no problem." Or he would see something that was broken and he would just fix it. I wouldn't have to be like, "Hey, this is broken. Can we get it fixed?" He just fix it. It was pretty cool to see. Very excited about that. Another thing I want to say about this credit screen, it's crazy to see like all the different people that I've actually like worked with. It's pretty insane to me. And as you know, we still kept the OG Sean's menu screen, which I really love. Anyways, awesome to see.
Yeah, some more Tristan stuff here. We were able to get in some poison status indications for the Croc. The top right, we were able to just get in the model for the shield bot. And in the bottom, he actually programmed the entire boss that shows up around your second loop of the game. So, I mean, this stuff is like, he just picked it up and did it like crazy. So.
Yeah, I'm super happy we got this in. I feel like the Croc did not have enough player feedback. You really had no idea, like when you were doing damage to a character, no one really understood what the spikes were really doing. So now that you see the stacking poison, you can see that he actually does do damage, which is pretty important. But I still feel like overall this character is way weaker than the rest of them. But I still really like him. He's one of my favorites.
Yeah, moving on to our last programmer, Trevor. Awesome stuff here. Trevor's always patching up stuff what we need. He's the game system / core functionality. So he was able to set up the save states. He was able to set up the death screen indication. You're able to clear your save data if you want to start over. And just at the top left, you just implement anything that we really needed to get in on the last sprint. He was able to jump in and immediately get that in. So very cool stuff.
Yeah, very excited that we got all this stuff together. I know like implementing these systems, these back-end systems are very convoluted and can be very difficult and confusing, but Trevor got it in and it looks really awesome. So thank you, Trevor.
Yeah, huge shout out. All right, moving on to level design. Here's what we got in for the last sprint. We were actually able to get in a lot of extra assets for the levels. So at the top left, there's just miscellaneous stuff that kind of add to the character of the level, and each and every level. So that is just one instance where it's on the ice map. On the right side, Xander was able to fully reorganize our last ice map into something that works with Unity terrain and get in a lot of the assets originally built for it in the same sprint. So he completely just redesigned the ice map, got it all in, looks awesome. And he was able to actually make some particles for us. So at the bottom left is the poison particle, obviously from earlier. And on the bottom right is what happens when you slide around as the main character.
Yep, all these came out great. I'm very happy that we got these assets to the levels to kind of fill them out a little bit. Some of them looked a little barren, so that definitely helped out with that. The poison particle is also super useful, and the slide particle is awesome to see.
Awesome stuff. All right, so next we have our other level designer, Connor. Like I said, we were able to get in more assets for the maps just to give them some more character. Top left, we have the Lost City map where we were able to get in some cars, some broken telephone poles, a fountain. The top right is our brand new moon-based map that we were able to get in. There is the mining facility all over it, the walkways, and the inner part of the house with the new assets, just some alien technology computer stuff just to give it, like I said, more character. And at the bottom is the buried temple where we were able to get in some more cacti, some rocks, and the lizard bones, which is awesome to see.
Yeah, I think these all came out great. I was very, very excited to see that we were going to get this meteor map in. It looks awesome. I think it really closes out. We had 7 total maps, so shout out to the level designers for completing 7 maps that we have in our game. Very excited to see that. Also, the bones in the desert look great. You can't have a desert without bones.
Absolutely. All right, moving on to 2D art and animation. First up, we have Alex, and just look at this. Each one is absolutely awesome. So on the going from left to right, we have obviously the jump and land that we were able to splice up and play when we want to. The one to the right of it is the shooting and reloading. The one in the middle is the stealth generator. Obviously, we have the run and then the idle.
Yeah, Alex did a phenomenal job with all of these. My favorite one is obviously the shoot and the reload with the spinning pistols. Like, it just looks so good, and it actually feels really good in the game, which I think is super important to the gameplay, to have like good, nice, smooth animations.
Yeah, and each of these are completely in the final build of the game, and you can feel like you're running around as a little prison warden, got those dual pistols. It actually feels really cool, so
Yeah.
I encourage you to play. Next up, was still with Alex here, we actually got our game icon on the left, which shows up on the .exe, and the poster for the game in the middle. So, I mean, this is just awesome.
It just like I can't believe how fast Alex whipped this up. I was like, I did some like little Photoshop drawing. I was like, I want it to be kind of like this with the enemies like here, and Alex was like, yeah, no problem. And then comes with this amazing picture. It's like awesome. Very excited.
Yeah. No, super proud of this. Alex definitely got a lot of resume material during this class, and that's all we could hope for. So awesome stuff. Huge shout out. All right, moving on with more animations. This was a big animation sprint for us. We got every character in, which is awesome to see. So here is our regular inmate characters. So we have the slide ability, we have the shoot, we have the run, and the jump and land.
Yeah, all these animations came out great. Thank you, Andrew, for bringing these in the last minute. I know that we were getting all these animations pretty much in the final sprint, and he even made the rig for this model, and I know that he has never rigged before, so huge shout out to him for taking that on.
Cool stuff, and more animations. We were actually able to get 3 characters animated by 3 different people this sprint, which hugely increased productivity. So editor, of course, coming in clutch as always. We have our idol on the left, got a funny head spin because he's a robot. The walk/run when you speed it up on the left inner side. The middle right side, we have the jump and land, and of course you have the shoot.
Yep, all these animations came out great. Huge shout out to editor for helping us out get through this last sprint, so we could get all the animations in for all the characters. We would definitely not be able to do that without him.
Yeah, and the benefit about making a robot character is it makes animating a lot more easier because you get to kind of be rigid with the movement, and it doesn't have to be all this fluid human-like stuff. So I think that sped it up a little bit, but it looks awesome. Okay, so for modeling, we actually got some pictures of just all of the models we were able to get from the modelers into one scene. So for Dennis, there's 2 pictures here. For the first one, we have all of our characters and guns, and one of our enemies, our characters, and their guns and their shields and weapons here. But yeah, this was absolutely awesome. This is a huge resume piece, and we can't thank Dennis enough. The quality of these were extremely high. So.
Yeah, all these models came out phenomenally. They're super good. They look amazing in the game. We are very happy to have them. They look awesome.
Yeah. Awesome stuff. And we have another picture from Dennis as well. He was able to complete all of the characters we needed for the game. So you know what? We'll give him some more environmental stuff and some hazards to do. So you see the giant lizard bones, you see the bunker base, the rune stones, the meteor, the fountain, the mines, all of that stuff, and the portal, of course. But this was absolutely awesome. He completely just demolished the backlog in the last 2 weeks, and couldn't thank him enough. We got all the stuff in.
Yeah, I think my favorite one out of all these new assets that we got is definitely the bones for the desert map. I just love the fact of having like a giant dead skeleton in the middle of the desert. It came out perfectly.
Yeah. And our second modeler here, we got Mark. Mark absolutely killed the game. I'm sure he learned a lot about modeling this entire semester, about how to just, get the most efficient models out, get the right stuff exported and into Unity. Our modelers really did not like Unity, so we kind of had to teach them the simple stuff to do. But from left to right here, you can kind of see the theme of the levels kind of as they go here. And this is essentially all of the assets we have for the environmental stuff from Mark. So you can see the moon base, you got the buried temple, the lost city. You can kind of identify from just looking at it where you think those assets would go, and that's all we can hope for is those aesthetically pointed assets. So
yeah, all these assets came out great. Definitely, especially like the drill for the bucket excavator, I guess is what it's called, for the moon base. Very happy with how that came out. We could not be able to build these maps without you, Mark, so thanks a lot for all your hard work.
Yes, sir. All right, everybody, that wraps up Sprint 7 Post-Mortem for us. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this journey. This whole team was working extremely hard, and we did some risky stuff with this game, and it kind of came out really well. So I'm really proud of the team. Everyone was able to make awesome resume pieces, and like I said, that's all we really can hope for, and we're super glad you guys can join us on this journey. But from me, I guess, and then Zach will do a little goodbye, but super appreciate everyone on the team, and I want to keep in contact with a lot of you guys, if not everybody, to just talk about stuff in the industry and just keep in touch.
Yeah, everybody on our team. It was awesome to work with all of you. You guys did great work. Very happy with how our game turned out. It was amazing. It was a long journey. I know this whole COVID thing is crazy, and I was round 2 of it too. And huge shout out to everybody. Like, you guys did great. We got to get some hype in the chat for our team right now. Like, it's honestly like we worked them real hard, and they stepped up to the challenge. So thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah.
All right. Congratulations, Team Trapped. Coming up next is Into the Woods. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nathan Bestie. I'm the producer from Into the Woods, and with me is.
I'm Olivia. Oh, and I'm the designer on Into the Woods.
Yes, Olivia, our designer. Into the Woods, our game summary is that Into the Woods is a top down, randomly generated, tile based dungeon crawler in which players will be tasked with exploring the map to defeat the boss and find their missing master, all in 3 in game days. Within this adventure, the players will be able to cast spells, brew potions, and collect items that will make defeating combatants and the final boss an easier mission.
Awesome. And the vision for our game is that it is the goal of Into the Woods to provide players with a whimsical, charming dungeon crawling experience that will challenge them to make choices and fight their way to the win.
Exactly. For our team, we obviously had Olivia as our game designer. I was our producer. On our programming side, we had JT, Paul, and Chase. All of our 2D art was done by Atlay. Our animations done by Daniel. Our 3D art team was Talia and Erica, and our level designers were Reggie and Eric. We didn't get him in there, but Eder also helped us with our rigs. Thank you very much to him. Moving on to our statistics. For this project overall, we had 470 points total at the end of the day that we had for this game. After all the sprints were said and done and after everything was cleaned up, we had moved into verify and completed 423 of them, leaving 47 points left. I think it's fantastic that we were able to go through our, obviously as your backlog changes a little bit, but I think it was fantastic that even when we did trim down on different parts that we didn't do, we cut no major features and the vision of the game remained intact. And that's something that hopefully you guys will be able to see as we continue through with this. And now Olivia is going to start with our things that didn't go quite as right.
Absolutely. So definitely one thing that kind of goes a little bit not so right in most teams, and if it's not, it's a little bit of an interesting journey. But we had the initial forming and storming, so just weird crash course here. But there are generally 5 different things that go on when you're developing teams, and the first 2 phases are forming and storming. So we kind of had an initial little bit of a rocky start there, and the reason for this was not because necessarily people were like clashing in personality types or anything, but it was the fact that we were doing a lot of great work at the very beginning and people were just knocking it out of the park that sometimes somebody that maybe just wasn't doing as much as somebody who was doing a ton of work, they tend to fall through the cracks just a little bit. So it was really easy for people to kind of get it by with doing maybe 1 or 2 cards while somebody could be doing just like a million more. This led to some frustrations further down the road, which left us in that storming process just a little bit longer than maybe we wanted to be in. But we got that cleared up, and we can talk more about that later. But the kind of thing that we learned from this part was just the fact that it is not necessarily the best when you're not doing enough work, but at the same time, it can be a little bit of a detriment if you're also doing too much work. And so, Nathan, did you have anything you wanted to talk about on that one?
Yeah, I think, like you said a moment ago, we're going to talk about it a little bit later in the things we would do differently. But a lot of it just boiled down to time management, I think, for the group as a whole, and part of it, time management on my end as a producer. But other than that, I didn't have anything else for that point. The next point of what went not so right, the full plan. As we stated, the vision didn't really change. The definitions and the words that we used explaining that vision changed, and so we would have instances where cards would be written out completely, but it wouldn't be using the correct word. We would say boss 1 instead of boss A or something like that, and so we would have a duplicate card written, and so that led to a lot of time spent going back and saying, okay, is this stuff done? Is this stuff done? Why do we have cards existing in the backlog eating up points if the thing that they're describing is already done? And or just making sure that the actual cards were written out completely, making sure, like, if we have a model, is the texture on the card, is it a separate card, things like that. Did you have anything for that, Olivia?
That's just kind of it. I can move on to the next point, which
Okay.
sort of kind of ties into this one, but it's more or less just the fact of a good problem to have, I guess, sort of. And it kind of goes back to like the very first instance of the things that we thought went not so right. But is that people were bulldozing through cards. Like we would give them cards and they would just be like, all right, I got it. And they'd sit down and they would just do a smashing job at everything. And this kind of is a good thing, but it's also a not so good thing. First of all, just because of the fact that like you have some people that are just consistently going and going and going. So then people that are doing the amount of work that maybe a normal person would do on a normal day, it just becomes this whole situation. And then it becomes a miscalculation of time. And so something that might have been sat down in the sprint kickoff and was like, how long is this going to take you? Oh, it's going to take me about maybe like 2 days to accomplish that task. And then they would accomplish it in 2 hours. And you're like, well, so then this translates to some faulty numbers in our burn down chart. And then things get a little skewed. And then you think that you're going to go a good place and then you're not going. So it's a whole thing. But then the other issue that this brings up is a mad scramble to find cards. So a lot of times Nathan and I would sit down and find these milestones that we were looking at. And we'd say, okay, we need this task and this task done. And we can't do this task before we get this task. So we need to make sure that we're doing this first. But because of the fact that people were just bulldozing through the things that they needed to do, we'd have steps that were complete before other steps, which could potentially lead to blocks down the road. So we had to really find those cards. And it was more of like a I can't speak. Prioritization of
There it
things
is.
and tasks in the backlog for those people. And I know that Nathan can speak a little bit further about that portion, but
Yeah, I think it, like Olivia said, it's kind of a good problem. It's more on me in this particular instance, just for not being experienced with such a large group and things like that. But if you have a couple team members who are really progressing, and like say the art department, like the 3D modelers, like they're out there and they're just getting everything done, and the programming team is just out there knocking everything down, you have to make sure that you rein it in a little bit so that you can keep everybody on the same page. If you have all these assets that are waiting to be put in the game, you're going to have some people who don't have very much to do anymore. You have some people who have everything in the world to do, and suddenly it becomes this imbalance and you start losing track of what's important. And fortunately, as time went on, we were able to correct that issue, and we started like having establishments for, okay, this is what we're doing, this is how we're going to compensate if we need this time, that sort of thing. But yeah, those were the things that didn't go quite as right. Things that did go right, though, I know Olivia and I both want to talk about this slide, but this is just sort of a visual representation of what I was talking about before with the vision staying the same, right? Basically, from day one, what Olivia presented to us and said, "Hey, this is the idea that we want to that I want us to build. This is what I want Into the Woods to look like." Down the bottom left, that's our first build, and down the bottom right, that's our last build. Like it it is obviously is not the exact same, but it doesn't look radically different. It doesn't look like, oh, this is a completely different game. Like it has kept the core of what it is, and it's really great to see that in the game because that vision stayed consistent, and that helped us make sure, like, okay, are we accomplishing the goal that we're setting out to do? Are we reaching our target audience? Stuff like that. And I know, Olivia, like I said, you've got more to say about it.
Absolutely. This is one of my favorite slides to put together, specifically because I kind of wanted to take a look and I was like, I wonder how that progression happened. Just because I remember the very first build getting a lot of really good feedback on our feedback form saying, like, wow, the game looks beautiful right now. And I was like, yes, that was my goal. Unlike the rest of the designers right now in this class, like my background actually is in art and design. So it's like it's such a radically different role to be in. And it was like a huge priority of mine though. I was like, I want to make this look amazing. And so that first build, just the look kind of still stayed consistent, even though the assets might have changed a little bit and there's a little bit of a different composition there. Like it looks beautiful. And the other thing that I wanted to note on this one was just that even in the second to last build, we were feature complete. Like we were knocking it out of the ballpark. Because I also told myself, like being also the producer that I have in that background of is the fact of I want to make sure that by the time we get to this point that we are done here. And that's just kind of that weird pre-planning and thinking that I have there. And so just our team was just phenomenal in making sure that they were getting the work done that they were doing. So that's definitely something that went right, which sort of ties into our next point. And Nathan was talking about this earlier, but having a plan and a vision is super important. I love planning. It's one of my favorite things in the whole entire world.
There's
And
so many lists.
so many lists,
So many
so many
lists.
spreadsheets. But knowing where we were going was just super helpful. And the reason it was is that it helped us build these milestones and it helped tell us, okay, by this first build, I want like all these trees need to be here. I want that post processing. Like that was something that really helped us create this plan and this just avenue that gave everybody the direction that they needed to go, depending on what we were doing for that specific milestone. Even if it wasn't drawn out, hey, like we need this. Nathan and I knew we were on the same page in that regard.
Yep.
Also, having this plan and this vision in place helps to scope the project down later. So there wasn't a whole lot that I had planned for in the initial stages of everything that didn't get put in the project, which was super awesome. But the thing about it is that it made it easier to cut down on things when we needed to, because obviously we knew that we weren't going to get everything into the game. It made it a lot easier because we said, okay, so since we've made it this far, what can we do to make sure that our game is shippable and still really fun? And the other thing is that the team made it super easy for us to know what could and couldn't be done. And we would just very flat out ask, like, hey, how long is this going to take you? And they'd be like, oh, it's going to take this long. And then we kind of, I guess, learned from the process of like, oh, you said this is going to take 4 days, but I don't think it'll take 4 days. So we kind of learned that from them too, of knowing what we needed to cut and what we didn't need to cut. So that was always something, and we could just push them a little bit more. And Nathan, I know you also have some.
Yeah, this will take me 3 or 4 days. Finishes it in the afternoon. Oh, sorry, boss. I guess I'm just done with it or whatever. That that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's great. It can be a pitfall, I think, and for the most part, our team avoided this. But it can be a pitfall if you get overconfident, right? Saying like, "Oh yeah, no, we could just finish all this stuff really quickly," things like that. But learning, with the team learning each other, and like we communicated a lot as a group and stuff like that, and we'll talk about it in a few slides. But communicating as a group, spending time just sort of hanging out, it was great because it allowed us to be able to give more accurate estimations, like get to know each other and be like, hey, like what's going on with you personally? Is that gonna bump into your into your work related stuff and things like that? But yeah, maintaining the vision and the plan, it was great. And the team member support and the building the collaborative efforts and things like that. It's really awesome to be able to be like part of that group, part of the team, right? Like I said, I'd not led a group this large before, and it's always fun to see people from different disciplines and who are working on different sections working together. Like I loved being able to look over in the programming channel and see the level designers in there, and they're communicating and they're talking. I'm like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, oh yeah, we're just working out like this problem, this thing over here. The 3D artists and the 2D artists are talking about stuff. Everybody's obviously asking for our help as well, or our attention rather, but it's just great to see the team work together. It was a little rougher on the start, but I think that comes with any sort of team building process, like getting to know people, since I don't believe very many of us had worked with each other before. But by the end of it, we had built essentially a pipeline, right? Where, okay, the work is being assigned, it's at this phase, it's at this phase. Everybody was communicating with each other. Hey, I got this done. I'm going to forward it to you. Will you take care of that? Yeah, absolutely. I've got this part done. Cool. It's now sitting in the verify pile or whatever. Things like that. Like I said, the 3D, the 2D group, the level designers and programming, and bringing up Eder again. Working with Eder, having the modelers give him the stuff and be like, hey man, like, how much time do you need? Blah blah blah. Turn around as fast as he could. I'm incredibly grateful for all of your help. This game would not be anything close to how awesome it is without Eder's help. And his turnaround to Daniel with those rig models was absolutely amazing. Olivia?
Absolutely. And that was just kind of the thing that I wanted to touch on before was that the screenshots that you see on the right hand side of the screen are really those things that went right. So, for example, the very top one I want to point out was just like the enemies that you see in there. I don't think they're all in there, but there's a good some of them in there. And those were, I swear, they were like ripped straight out of like a 2D platform. And I could not thank Atlee and our 3D modelers like even more for those, just because that was a collaborative effort. And if there was something that was just not right, we could give it back to Atlee and he could do something, or we could give it back to the 3D artists and just say, hey, this was great. So that collaboration was really great there. And even that collaboration specifically in that screenshot was the entirety of the 3D team and the level design team for that matter, of making those compositions that I talked about before. Of like, I told the level designers, like, I want to see some compositions in these rooms. I don't want them to just be assets slapped in the room. But even the floral forest, which is one of my favorite ones, if you get to play the game, it is something that the 3D team did together. Talia ended up modeling all these things, and then Erica went in and textured all of them. And it's just ridiculous. And the level design and programmers, I put the bottom screenshot because that's my favorite one visually to look at. But Reggie made those beautiful particle effects to create for the player when they're casting their spells, and Chase was able to just like put them onto there like it was no big deal. And so like that's a really cool thing to see. And like Eric was always consistently popping into programming and 3D art, and it's just ridiculous. And I just want to give a huge shout out to Eder and Daniel on this one, just because they had such a great collaborative effort together of making sure that they were doing everything that needed to be done, especially when we hit a huge animation hiccup. Like they were there together and they were there nonstop. I just remember a very vivid conversation I was having with Eder, and then he messaged me later and was like, I'm so sorry that like maybe I just didn't like come off correctly in this conversation. I was like, no. Like, I'm sorry if I came off bad. So it was a great time. And I guess those are the great things that went right that greatly transition us into what we might do differently. So it's an interesting way to go about it, right? But the first thing is definitely spending a little bit more time in the initial Trello formation. And so what I'm meaning by this and planning out these epics completely is not just the kind of what we were talking about earlier, and making sure that you're not necessarily saying, okay, I want enemy, right? And so enemy is a very broad term. And so we would get it to the point of like, oh, we need this enemy, we need its animation, we need its model. But sometimes we'd forget like something like the textures, for example. And so it'd be like, I forgot, we don't want Gray Lambert texture for boss A enemy. And so it was just making sure we're completely planning those things out. And then the other thing that we might do differently, or two other things, I guess, but one of them being enforcing deadlines before build nights. Late nights are not fun, especially when you are just working at something all day long from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until like 2 o'clock in the morning. It's not only like detrimental because of the fact that you're just kind of crunching and getting everything done, but it's also detrimental for the fact of like mental sanity starts deteriorating. I start doing weird dances on camera to make sure everybody's motivated, like, and then we start getting irritated at things. So it's never a fun time to make sure that you are like cranking those things out last minute. So just enforcing those deadlines before build night is super important. And then something very specific was having very particular names on everything, but earlier. So we did have that established, but we'd kind of passed the point of no return when we started getting to very specific naming conventions. So it was just a mumbo jumbo gumbo pot of fun-loving stuff. And so also encouraging more Unity packages earlier on. So we did have kind of a thing where we were like, oh, we want a Unity package for this. Maybe we need an FBX for this. Maybe we need a PNG for this. And then it also just helps kind of keep that established naming convention going on if you're giving that Unity package directly to the source and just saying, okay, throwing this in the project, it already goes into all its folders. And I know Nathan has some more to talk about with that.
Yeah, mainly the point I wanted to touch on is just the naming conventions thing. It's the curse of having so many creative people on a team is that everyone's like, I'm just gonna name like this is the main menu _1, or this is the main, and then someone else will say this is main menu 1_test or something like that. And so then you get into your project and you're like, okay, I'm gonna test out this person's stuff, and you're like, ah, yes, which of these main menus is it in, or something similar to that. And like Olivia said, we got it sorted out, but I think that it would have saved us a lot of time if we had just set down as team leadership, like set down like, okay, this is our standards for naming conventions, this is our standards for this, that, and the other. The Unity packages thing is just time saving stuff. Really, all of this boils down to things that would have saved us a lot of time. But what we would do again, though, speaking of time, is spending time together. We had a Minecraft server for a little bit. Obviously, playing it dropped off as we had to spend more time on this because work is a priority. But Olivia and I both pushed, starting at the beginning semester, like team cohesion and stuff like that. I have a background in the military, and spending a lot of time with the people that you work with when you're not working is like a huge part of that, right? And since we were separated, we're like, what are the things we can do? And so we would do stuff like play Minecraft together. We would encourage each other to take pictures of stuff we would do on the weekends. So there's a lot of pictures of dogs, walks in the park, things like that. And that sort of thing, I touched on it a little bit earlier, but that sort of thing, it builds that team cohesion because you're like getting to know the other people. You understand them a little bit better. You get a feel for like, okay, this is what this person's about. And then when you turn around and you're working with that person, you can say, okay, hey, like I'm going to communicate to you this way because this is what I think that you'll understand more or more easily. And you can like reference things that you talked about in your off time. And sometimes people would talk about class related stuff and they'd be like, oh, that gives me an idea. You know, I'm going to work on this, that, the other. And we just thought that was amazing. The other one is making a plan and sticking with the plan. Ask anybody on the team. Olivia has a reference chart and a list for everything. Whenever she said, hey, I would like this monster, please, da-da-da, it wouldn't necessarily make it onto the card, but there are Pinterest boards just full of reference images. The cottage, the player character, all the rest of that. From what I could tell, and from what Olivia could tell, we never had to worry about saying, okay, well, we weren't necessarily sure what you wanted. It always huge reference chart, and Olivia would just say, yes, that one, and that one. And it worked out really well. It was really great. We never had to sort of feel around to say, okay, this isn't necessarily the direction we were going with. I know I'm not going to steal Olivia's thunder, but I know she has an example for Daniel with his animation stuff. So I'll let you tell that one.
Absolutely. So I don't know. It's funny because I watched like the other sprint reviews and game designers are like, oh, I wish I had more references XYZ. I was like, no, dude, I probably could have had more, to be honest with you. But that was like my forte. Like it was great. I would sit here and just be like, I want it to look like this, and I'll show you a little bit more about what I'm talking about later on. But it was very specific. I would just be like, it's a thing, and then I would like Google it on YouTube just to find very specifically what I was looking for, or just some kind of an image. And just kind of having, like, I can't stress it enough, like having a plan is super important, at least for me. Maybe that's not how everybody works, but for me and my brain, it works fantastic. And so encouraging people to ask those questions was super important. But I know that I have more to say on that later, so I will chat about that in potentially the next slide when I talk
The next
about
slide, we're talking about what we learned.
listen, yay! I learned a lot of things that can't be put all in a single slide, but I boiled it down to 3 topics. And I guess that first one is like, what does it mean to be a designer? So I think I touched on it earlier, but like my background is nowhere in game design, and in fact, like my major is not even in game design. Like my major is in animation production, yet here I am. And so it was an incredible journey to kind of learn. Like it's like adopting like a cat for the first time and you have no idea what a cat is. Like I don't even know. It was this whole adventure of like trying to figure out what it meant to be a designer in the first place, and it was a lot of like me having midlife crises and Jeff's office hours of like, what am I supposed to be doing here? And so it was a whole adventure. And like, if I could write a book about it, like I would, like, what does it mean when you don't know what you're doing and you just get dropped into the situation? Speaking of cats, so
Sorry.
that was just like a huge thing for me of like, what does it mean to be a designer? And I guess the next thing was just kind of how do you express this vision that you have in your head? Because obviously my background being in art, like the first thing that I want to do to express this vision is just draw at everything. And I did not have the time. I had a weekend, I had 2 days to kind of express this vision. And the way that I was able to do that was learning what it meant to write a cohesive game design document. And so I'm generally okay with words. So kind of giving myself about just hours at a time to sit down and write everything that I was thinking about in my head was just a huge help in making sure that I could express this vision of this design of the game that I had. And then the other thing that I really learned from this experience was just like the importance of walking away. And I put this is super difficult because it's difficult for me on any standpoint. And it's not just the fact of taking breaks, because I already knew that taking breaks is a super huge thing, but it's literally walking away from the project for a while. Because even if it was just like sitting here and like going and working on another thing, I really needed to learn how to walk away from the project and not stare at it forever. Because if there's anything that I've learned from any creative endeavor is that when you're working on something for such a long period of time, you start seeing all the little things that you know that you can fix. And it was really hard for me to not want to sit here and fix them or figure out what I could do and create this plan to fix them. So it was just really the importance of learning to walk away from the project for a while and kind of clear my head and come back to it with some fresh eyes. And that was just, it was an entire journey. And so, but I'll let Nathan talk about kind of what he learned through this process.
Yeah, one of them I already touched on. As a producer, it's not just your time management, it's everyone's time management. Beginning of the semester, I sort of sat down, I was like, okay, like, what do I have to do? What do I need to take care of, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, yeah, I think I got this. I think everything is fine. And then about 2 or 3 days later, I'm like, wait a minute, what's everybody else doing? What is, like, what are these people taking care of? How is everybody else's stuff going? So, uh, not controlling their time, because obviously you can't control other people, but just basically learning other people's schedules, learning other people's like time expectations for themselves, learning what kind of time you need to give people. The second one, also about time, but it's more for the project as a whole, is I basically have learned to double any estimation of time for bug fixes and technical issues. Fortunately, we didn't have any, very many rather, large major issues. I believe we only had like 2 game crashing bugs, which is fortunate. But even those 2, they took the better part of a day and a half to take care of. And so I think that making sure that I have enough time and as a producer, rather give our team enough time to deal with those issues and make sure that we can get together and troubleshoot those issues. It's incredibly important. And then the last point is trust but verify all things, even your own work. As a producer, I am responsible for moving things through from the verify to the completed pile. And initially, it was just sort of okay, yeah, no, they said they did the thing, it should be fine, we'll just put it in there. I was skipping the vital step of making sure that it worked with everything else that existed and that everything was functioning as intended. This did not go on for very long because obviously it's very important that things get checked. And making sure to verify all this stuff, it does take more time, you guessed it again. But after doing that and making sure that I'm even checking my own work, like, did I make sure all the work got turned in properly? Did I make sure the slides got turned in? Am I leaving myself enough time to deal with the technical issues, et cetera, et cetera? Just making sure that there is all the verifications, checking it twice, sort of a thing. That is also very important. Yeah, as Olivia said, to put a bow on that, we obviously learned a lot. But instead of talking about us, we're going to go on about some of the stuff that our team accomplished. On this slide, we have a sort of greatest hits of Into the Woods. We could go on all day about it, but I'm going to let Olivia talk about stuff because she articulates herself better than I do when talking about our game.
Depends on the day. But no, I think that a lot, like a huge thing for me was just the fact that funny enough, we're all in this together. But like it was just a whole collaborative effort, and I just wanted to kind of put that out there and highlight everybody on the team, but I wanted to highlight everybody together because it was kind of like we're all in this together. I just said that 50 times. You said I was articulate, and now I can't do it. But so I will just start at the top mostly. But you've seen the flower forest before, but also the mushroom forest. These are two of the things that we were super proud of. We didn't know if they were actually going to make it into the game, and Talia and Erica blew it out of the water. They said, "Hey, I can make that happen." I said, "Are you sure?" And they were like, "Yeah, absolutely." And they delivered beyond words. I am speechless. These are two of my favorite things now. I used to love the bioluminescent forest a lot, but these two just like totally sold it for me. And these were a super huge collaborative effort. So not only are the assets in the room, but those compositions that I was talking about with the level designers are totally here. Not to mention the floors, because the floor in the flower forest was made by Eric, and the floor in the mushroom forest was made by Reggie. They just creative outlets, creative juices flowing. And then kind of just moving down, like I want to give a huge shout out to the entire programming team. And so this is actually a clip of Chase's work, but it was really a collaborative effort of everybody. Maybe not the specific task, but the entire programming team was really working together to make sure that this actually came to life and was the vision and the game that I had pitched in my initial pitch was that we had all these rooms that were connecting. We had this random world generation system, and it's just like these 96 tiles that these level designers created, all coming together and creating this cohesive experience that you can just play over and over again. It'll be different, because that was what I wanted for my own game. Is I wanted to make sure that it was something that was awesome. And I guess we'll kind of move down to the lower right-hand corner, jumping around a little bit, but that main menu scene, it was also a collaborative effort of everybody. You could see the UI work from JT there. You could see the UI artwork from Atlee there. You see the scene that was made by Talia. You see the particle effects that were made by Eric. There are just so many hands that touched all this. That's why it was hard to like have individual slides for people, just because everybody was working on everything together. And so kind of going back to that Atlee topic of just the fact of Atlee just blows it out of the water. No matter what I'm doing, no matter where I go, Atlee will continue to create these beautiful things that I just don't know how he has the just consistent creative juices flowing. I want to just take a page out of his book one day. But that UI thing that I'll kind of go into this next thing was just a whole thing about referencing, because I told Atlee, I was like, I love this game and I love this game and I love the way that they have their UI set up. He watched gameplay footage, he downloaded a game that I talked about and made sure that these things were the things that came out of my brain. And it's like, we're like hive-minded here. It works so well. And same on the topic of referencing, down in the bottom left corner, Reggie, I told him, I was like, when I'm thinking of spells, I definitely think of the movie Onward from Pixar, because I love Disney movies. And he was just like, I got you. He went and watched clips from the movie, figured out exactly what I wanted, went back and forth with me on these, and that's why those look as beautiful as they do. And then my hugest shout out, which I'm sure that Nathan has been waiting for me to talk about.
It's your thunder moment. Steal it just for you.
Totally for Daniel. Like I'm in love with this gif that you see in the middle here of the little just like wobbling characters. That's probably my favorite animation in the whole game. But it just goes to show you like how committed this team was to like really sticking to the vision that I had in my brain. Because I told Daniel, I was like, go and watch VeggieTales, and he's like, excuse me. I was like, go watch VeggieTales. Like that's what I want. And then I think even at one point I told him, I was like, you know what? You know how like a chihuahua just jitters when it's really excited? Like, that's what I want. And he goes, okay. And just all the commitment of these people to like reference my vision, to tell me what I want. It's just, it brings a tear to my eye, because they really like took this vision right out of my brain. It might not have been exactly what I thought of when I was dreaming up this idea in the depths of the night, but it's perfect and it's everything that I would have wished for and more. And I'll pass back to Nathan.
It isn't what you said, it's what you wanted, though. With that, we end our final sprint review. Obviously, thank you very much to everybody who helped by playtesting and giving us feedback. Thank you very much to our team. You guys are really awesome. As I told you guys, I think on Tuesday, I would gladly work with any and every one of you again. You guys are all-stars, and I appreciate your patience as we all work through this together. And thank you, Olivia, for giving us such a great project to work on.
Thank you, team, for creating something great. And that's it for us.
That's it for us. We hope you all have a great night.
All right. Congratulations, Team Into the Woods. You're out of the woods. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Join us when we come back next semester with all new stuff and more fun things of 495 sprint reviews. It's going to continue on into next semester. So, yeah, subscribe to the channel to see those. And we're going to be all done. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.